Good evening, folks. Kent Hovind here with Joe Roberts in Kentucky of the Kentucky Atheist. Tonight will be a debate. It's my debate number 308. And the topic for tonight is evolution a religious cult? I say that all the time. I believe that it is. He does not believe it is. So I'll have to defend my position. Why do I think it's religious? And he's going to say it's not. And we're glad you joined us. We're on a bunch of different channels. They're all listed on drdino.com, Facebook and Twitter and all that kind of stuff. And Joe will give you his channels in a minute here. If you want to go on those, let's see. Home. So we're going to start here. We're at Dinosaur Adventureland in Lenox, Alabama, straight north of Pensacola, 70 miles. And you can come visit our place for free. Had a bunch of visitors today. And this all got started because we were hoping to go up to the Kentucky Atheist Association when they meet at Ken Ham's Noah's Ark. They're going to protest the Ark or something. July, 5th, 6th, 7th? Yeah, anyway, come join us. We'd love to have you up there. We're going to talk. I got to defend the position. Is evolution a religious cult? We need to define a couple terms first for this thing. What is religion? What is science? What is a cult? Okay, science, knowledge gained from using observation and experiments to describe and explain the world around us. My position is there are no observations to support the evolution theory. Nobody ever sees an animal change to something else. So they will say, well, it happened slowly over millions of years. Well, that means it's not observable, which means it's not science. That's my contention. What is science? It comes from the word scientia, which means knowledge. Knowledge that's of testable explanation and the predictions about the world. Religions also attempt to understand and explain the world. But religion is not considered a science. I agree. And evolution is a religion, not a science. You have to believe in evolution. Religion versus science differences. Primary difference between religion and science lies in the method of acquiring knowledge and their approaches to understanding the world. Science relies on empirical evidence and testable hypotheses, which can be verified through experiments and observations. I would say there is no experiment or observation that can verify evolution. Therefore, it's in the religion category, not the science category. Okay? The knowledge is subject to revision and improvement as new evidence emerges. In contrast, religion is based on faith and belief, often centered around sacred texts or spiritual experiences that are not subject to empirical testing. Religious knowledge is typically considered absolute and unchanging. Well, I believe by faith God made the world, and the evolutionists will never admit that they believe by faith a whole lot of things. Time, space, matter coming into existence from nothing, life getting started in a warm little pond, life changing to some other kind of living. They'll never admit that that's a faith because they know they lose their tax funding. Right now, they got all the taxpayers paying for their religion to be taught in their school system. And I'm going to fight that till I die. And when I die, my videos are going to keep going. So it won't do any good to kill me, guys. Okay, there we go. St. Darwin's Evolution Church. Now, evolution is the substance of fossils hoped for, the evidence of links not seen. I love that, Dwayne Gish. What is science? Knowledge gained through study. Knowledge system uses observation, experimentation to describe and explain natural phenomena. The term science refers to the organized body of knowledge people have gained. I agree. I like science. I taught science 15 years. Evolution is not part of science. It's in the religion category, which is fine. I have a religion. I admit it. They have a religion and they won't admit it. That's the whole crux of this tonight. The scientific method. Ways to solve a problem. Okay? Make an observation, develop an idea, think of experiments, predict what will happen, observe what actually happens, and modify the predictions and start over if you need to. I have a prediction that cows will always produce cows. Babies will always be cows. Work. That's a religion. I wish you guys would just admit it. It's okay to have a religion. Don't be embarrassed. Okay? So make an observation, an idea. Why does it happen? I think there's something genetic. Think of experiments to test it. Okay, let's get a bunch of farmers all over the world to breed their cows and see what happens. They'll always get cows. That's what actually happens. Modify predictions. We don't need to. They're all fine. So apes produce baby apes. That must be genetic. Keep letting them breed. Babies will be apes. They're always apes. Seems to always work. Charts like this are not science, showing an ape-like creature turning to all the different kinds of humans. Everything they show is speculation, not science. No one has ever seen an ape produce a non-ape. These are just lines on paper is all they are. What if I told you questioning science is science? I agree. I love science. We should question it. See, evolutionists don't want theirs questioned. Questions. You agree the standard definition for science is not the knowledge man has accumulated by observation, experimentation, and testing. That's the standard definition, has been for centuries. So how do you define the word evolution? How do you define the word species? And what exactly is the evidence? Well, evidence comes in several different flavors. Any lawyer can tell you that. The available body of facts and information indicating whether a belief or position is true or valid. Now, in biology, ology means the study of, okay? From the Greek logos, which really means knowledge or the study of. Bio means life, so biology is the study of life, okay? So what is the evidence? Simple definition. It's a sign which shows that something exists or is true, okay? Evidence. That which tends to prove or disprove something, ground for belief or proof. There are 4 types of evidence. The 4 types of evidence by which facts can be proven or disproven. This is how they do it at trial. There's real evidence, demonstrative evidence. I can demonstrate it. You cannot demonstrate any animal producing a different kind of animal. You cannot demonstrate that. You cannot show me any real evidence. There's documentary evidence. Nobody's got proof. That's why they use the fossil record, as if that's a documentary evidence. We'll watch that. It'll happen tonight. Then there's testimonial evidence where somebody saw it. Some farmer said, man, my cows produced, a goat or something else. 3 primary standards of proof beyond reasonable doubt: preponderance of evidence and clear and convincing evidence. Okay? So levels of proof. If there's no evidence, he's not guilty. If there's a scintilla, a little bit, reasonable suspicion, probable cause, preponderance, clear and convincing, reasonable doubt, none of those will make a person guilty in the court of law. Only convincing. There is irrefutable evidence. Evolution. The process by which different kinds of living organisms are thought to have developed and diversified from earlier forms. Well, they think it happened, and they have great faith. Congratulations. I appreciate your faith. It's not science, though. Gradual development of something, especially from simple to more complex. That has never been seen. You guys believe it happened, and you got your big chart saying it's showing out lines on paper. It's not science, though. It developed, it diversified from. Evolution is a process of gradual change that takes place over many generations, during which species of animals, plants slowly change some of their physical characteristics. See, it takes place over many generations, so you can't see it. Well, that makes it not science. Symptoms, they rise, development, adaptation. In this section, we define evolution as modern biology as it applies to ecology. Evolution is defined as a change in the inherited traits of a population of organisms through successive generations. I agree with their definition. Descent with modification from pre-existing species. Cumulative inherited change in a population of organisms through time, leading to the appearance of new forms. That's not observed. That's a religion. You believe that, and they believe it strongly. No question. A process of continuous branching and diversification from common trunks. This pattern of irreversible separation gives life history as basic directionality. So, modification from, developed from. Evolution, a gradual process in which something changes into a different and usually more complex or better form. Change in the genetic composition of a population during successive generations. This is what evolution teaches, and it's just not observable. That's my complaint. Evolution, science is knowledge gained from using observations. Where has anybody ever seen a dog produce a non-dog or a cow produce a non-cow? It doesn't happen. They believe it happens, and they say, it's changed over millions of years. That takes it out of the realm of science. Wish you guys could just admit we have a religion. We believe. Yeah, it's fine. Have a worldview. I'm in favor of that. But if you believe you're related to a whale and a frog and go ahead and believe that. These are the words they use, though. Developed from, change, diversified from, derived from. You don't know any of that. Did dinosaurs turn into birds? Yes, they turned into birds. Many scientists agree. This is not science. Okay. A lot of people agreeing does not make it science. Go ahead, Joe.
All right, Joe, you'll have 10 minutes for your opening statement now.
Okay.
first of all, I appreciate Kent having this conversation with me, and if Kent does manage to come to the Ark Encounter protest, I think we'll have some great conversations there as well. But this claim that evolution is somehow a religion is something that Ken has said a number of times, and I've just made a few basic points here to why I disagree with that. The first point I want to say is that evolution is based on science and not faith. Evolution is a scientific theory, meaning it's based on observable evidence, testing, and peer review. It explains how species change over time through processes like natural selection and genetic mutation. Science constantly updates this as new evidence comes in. Religion, on the other hand, typically involves faith belief in things that may not be observable or testable in the same way or any way at all. It makes predictions that can be falsified. A key feature of science is that theories must be falsifiable. You can test them, and they can be proven wrong. Evolution fits that mold. If evolution were false, it would be observed. But instead, we find extremely strong evidence in places like the fossil record, as Kent mentioned, DNA similarities, and observed changes in species, such as antibiotic resistance. Religion usually deals with metaphysical or moral truths that can't be tested in quite the same way. It doesn't, evolution doesn't involve worship or a moral code. There's no holy book of Darwin, no rituals, no deity, no salvation. Evolution doesn't tell you how to live your life. It's a description of natural processes, not a prescription for behavior or ethics. How can a religion not have any adherents? When asked their religion, many, perhaps most people who believe in evolution will call themselves members of some mainstream religion, such as Christianity, Buddhism, or Hinduism. None identify their religion as evolution. If evolution is a religion, it's the only religion that is rejected by all of its members. Evolution can be considered a religion in the metaphorical sense, something pursued with zeal or devotion. This, however, could apply to stamp collecting, watering plants, or practically any other activity. So when you call evolution a religion in this way, it effectively makes the word evolution meaningless, or religion meaningless, sorry. Also, Kent brought up the courts. In court cases, in the court case McLean versus Arkansas Board of Education in 1982, they also cited for precedent Epperson versus Arkansas, Willoughby versus Stever, Wright versus Houston Independent School District. These are all cited in assuming, for the purposes of argument, that evolution is a religion or a religious tenet is remedy to stop the teaching of evolution, but not establish another religion or opposition as place. Yet it's clearly established in this case law. Perhaps also in common sense that evolution is not a religion. And that's really all I got for my opening.
All right, thank you for that. So if you want to give back the remainder of your time, we can go ahead and head into the cross-examination phase. What we're going to do is Dr. Hoven is going to have 10 minutes to ask very short, precise questions to the Kentucky Atheist. And Kentucky Atheist will give very short answers if possible. Try to keep your answers under 30 seconds or, a minute at very most. And then after 10 minutes, you will have 10 minutes to question Dr. Hoven, Joe. All right, so Dr. Hoven, you have now 2 minutes to question the Kentucky Atheist.
All right, well, thank you. A definition of religion: a belief in and reverence for a supernatural power or powers regarded as creating and governing the universe. What do you believe brought the universe into existence?
I don't believe that any particular thing brought it into existence. It seems that matter is something that has existed and changes forms, which also follows through with our laws of thermodynamics.
So where did this matter come from, and where did the energy come from?
Why does it have to come from somewhere?
So if it's always been, then we have a problem with the laws of thermodynamics, like you mentioned, with everything winding down. How can the sun still be hot? How can the stars still be giving off heat? How can the planets still be giving off heat? If it's eternal, they would have cooled off long ago.
Well, it can still change forms, and entropy doesn't negate the possibility of there being organized places where things come together in complex ways.
Well, you're saying that, but where's the evidence for that? All observable scientific evidence says everything's falling apart. Everything gets worse with time.
Well, if you go on to read further into that, it does explain that you actually expect complexity to be part of that. It's not just everything starts from one position and goes to another. There's lots of steps and things involved in that. It's part of thermodynamics.
Well, I taught physics for years. I'm pretty well aware of all this, but you say there would be, if there's generally chaos reigning over everything, things gradually falling apart, coming unglued, there would be little pockets where it would reverse, the opposite would take place, which I know is what you guys believe.
Well, it's not so much that I speak about chaos, that it's places of higher energy moving to places of low energy, right? And in the course of doing that, there's no place where it doesn't allow for there to be complexity involved in the total picture of that. So the overall picture of the universe, if you're looking at the universe as a whole, you would say that, yeah, everything's moving to this state. But you can still have star creation, galaxy creation, and everything as it does that. And those things begin to move towards that state as well. None of that violates the laws of thermodynamics.
Well, again, you're saying that this has never been observed. In science, what we can observe. That's why you just demonstrated, I think, that you believe that, which makes it part of a religion. It's not scientifically observable. Nobody's ever seen this. How did a Big Bang, which spreads things out like fragments from a hand grenade, how did those pieces ever get together out in space? They get further apart like spokes on a bicycle wheel. How do you get stuff? We know there's a lot of stars out there, 70 sextillion that we know of. Yeah. That's a lot of stars. Did this happen that 70 sextillion times? It overcame the laws of thermodynamics?
The Big Bang describes the expansion of space and time, not necessarily like an explosion. Just the rapid expansion of space and time, which after it cooled a little bit, allowed hydrogen atoms to be able to gather and form the first stars. And then things like gravity and the other forces kick in at that point.
So where did these laws like gravity come from? Is there a lawgiver, or that's just, where did that law, why do they attract each other?
It's the laws. Those laws are the physical description of how those things work. We observe that in every case. So it's not.
All right.
Yeah.
I agree. All particles seem to attract each other. That's the law of gravity. Okay. But why don't they repel each other? Why aren't they just neutral? Why are they attracted? Who made gravity? What's that?
They can in some cases. Gravity is actually responsible for a lot of things spreading out in the universe, because it can have a repellent activity depending on the situation. Special situation.
Look
into it.
Well, yeah, Cartesian physics, 15 years. I'd say I'd have to disagree with that. So
okay.
Do you?
You're froze.
And there is such a thing as time. There is such a thing as time, and we seem to be moving through time in one direction. You can't go back. So I'd like to ask, where did time, space, and matter come from?
Well, time and space are part of the same thing, and are the fabric of our universe, and the Big Bang explains the expansion of that. Where that originally came from, there are some people that say it may be eternal. There's other theories of that. Honestly, I don't know, but just because I don't know doesn't mean I prescribe a supernatural solution.
That's true. Yep, I agree. A lot of things I don't know. Gee whiz. Well, I've always for years have said there are 6 different levels or stages of evolution. The first one being the cosmic evolution, the origin of time, space, matter. So if you want to say, I don't know, that's fine, because I don't think I do either, other than I believe by faith God created time, space, and matter. And he said that in 10 words in Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, time, God created the heaven, that's space, and the earth, matter. He made those 3, and he made them in that order. Because you have to have space before you have matter. Because if you had matter before there was space, where would you put it? So you're admitting, I think, that you do not know where time, space, matter came from, which again, you have to have those 3 things for evolution to take place. What is evolving? And so they keep relying on millions of years. That you're relying on time. Who made time?
Well, time is part of space, and again, like I do say I don't know because we can figure out what happened in the first few Planck seconds of the expansion of the universe, but before that we don't really know. And because of the nature of space and time, it's kind of silly to say things like outside or before when you're talking about time beginning, and it doesn't seem that makes a lot of logical sense. So again, there's some people that say it's eternal, but I don't think that's something that we can know actually.
Well, currently the public schools are teaching using this poster. Thousands and thousands of students see this, that the universe began from a big bang 13.772 billion years ago, whatever it is now. 20 years ago was 20 billion years ago. They change the number all the time. Okay. But the universe began, let's see, biological evolution. There's the time, space, and matter all began with a big bang. In a fraction of a second, the universe grew from smaller than an atom to bigger than a galaxy. Would you agree, if it took place in a fraction of a second, that all the matter that makes up these galaxies has to be moving faster than the speed of light for that statement to be true?
I think that that's not a problem, and we observe the further we look out in the universe, we see we think beyond that point that space and time is moving faster than the speed of light, which is allowed with time and space because it's not matter, it has no mass.
But again, this is theoretical. This is something you believe is not observable. Let's do another Big Bang.
No, there's lots of math and observations that go into this, but to say that we have a definitive answer for where everything came from, we don't. And I have no problem admitting that. My issue is the reverse of that, where we have people who believe in a religion saying that their religion tells them that they do know where these things came from, when really they're in the same boat.
Well, they're not quite in the same boat, because I believe God created time, space, matter. And I don't demand that everybody pay for that to be taught in the public schools and public museums. You guys want your religion taught in the public schools, and only your religion. You want kids taught this kind of chart stuff. Here we go. Time, space, and matter all began with the Big Bang. This is public school textbooks. This is not science, and it shouldn't be taught. The Big Bang has nothing to do with science. It's not observable, testable, demonstrable. You may believe in it. That's all I've been asking for a long time. Would you guys just admit this is something you take by faith, and let's get it out of the textbooks? I don't think we should teach any religions in public school. I don't think we should have public schools, okay? Certainly not run by the federal government. If we're going to have them, then if you're going to teach one religion, teach them all. But right now we got a system where we teach one and only one religion, evolution. And that's just, I resent that. Kept growing and expanding till today. So everything began as a dot. So I'd like to point out, as far as the audience here, that cosmic evolution is taken by faith. It has never been observed. It's something you believe happened. There was a Big Bang. Time, space, matter was just there somehow. Might have been eternal, might have came from nothing. Either way, it's not science. It's not observable, testable. You can't demonstrate it. You can't do an experiment on it. Then you'd have to have stars forming. Number two, nobody's ever seen a star form. What evidence do you have of observation of a star forming? Besides, seeing a spot get brighter doesn't mean you know a star's forming. How did the matter get together if it's spreading out radially from an explosion or a rapid expansion? How does it get closer together to be attracted by gravity and get into a ball?
Well, that's actually one of the major mechanisms that makes stars come to life, is because whenever we have these dust clouds, we do see like star nurseries is what they call them, and these dust clouds begin to collapse because of gravity, which is what we would expect to see. And then as those,
that's time. You can finish answering, but that's time.
Yeah.
Okay. As that dust continues to compact itself, eventually gravity overcomes the force of those atoms splitting, and that's what a star is. That's how it works.
All right. Thank you for that, Kentucky Atheist. So now we're going to begin your cross-examination time. You now have 10 minutes to question Dr. Hoven. Try to make your questions, comprehensible, and Dr. Hoven, try to keep your answers short, and go.
Okay. Why, first, do we see anybody that worships evolution, or what is the God they're worshiping within evolution?
I would say it's time. They think if you ask them, how could this change to this, their answer always involves an answer or something involving time over billions of years. So they really count on time being able to accomplish things that we can't observe. We don't see any animal change to something else. So they say, well, over millions of years it happened. So time is certainly one of them. Mutations would be another one. They think mistakes in the gene code can create something new.
Right.
That's never been observed.
So time is one of the major pillars of evolution.
Right.
Deep time. So we don't see people worshiping time or praying to time or in fact, many Christians hold the same belief, and Christianity is their religion, not evolution. And I think that, well, I'll just let you respond there because it's a question.
I have agreed all forever. Christianity is a religion. Yeah. I would like you guys to admit that evolution is also a religion and get it out of the schools. Go start private schools.
Why do you want to call evolution a religion?
Because it is. It's taken by faith. We don't see any animal. Every farmer on the planet in recorded history will tell you he's never seen a cow produce a non-cow or even start to produce a non-cow. They now have 450 breeds of cows. Some give more milk, some give more beef, some stand the heat better, stand the cold better, but they're always cows, and it's predictable. So that's observable. That's science.
So even though you believe that evolution is based on faith, do you accept that the claims of evolution are like put through the scientific process, through the scientific method?
No, because the scientific method is observation, experimentation, and testing. Let's take something that has a very short generation time, like bacteria. They're born, grow up, get married, have babies in 8 hours. You get 3 generations a day. Now that we can observe. And they have done studies for years on bacteria, trying to make them do something else. But the chart shows it's not observable.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Well, so the chart you guys believe shows bacteria turning to humans and everything else. It's this magical. These charts that are in all our public school textbooks have a single-celled creature of some kind, protozoa, bacteria, whatever you want to start with, amoeba, becoming a human. How did the bacteria? How did it get legs and arms and eyes and ears and hair? It's not observable.
Do you think that maybe that chart is just an artistic expression of an actual?
I know it's art. It's perfect. It's nothing but artistic. It's a propaganda poster. There's no science to back up any of those lines between those animals. They have on these charts a human connected to a line to a whale. The kid's going to think humans and whales are related, and they came from an amoeba. This is a propaganda poster. This isn't science. I think there's quite a variety of whales out there. I don't know how many. They might have had a common ancestor called a whale. But you shouldn't connect them with a line to humans or ducks or frogs. Well, they are. They're all connected with lines. This is my point. This is a religious poster. This is not a scientific poster. It doesn't belong in our public school textbooks. It belongs in a religion class. That's all.
So you're okay with anything being taught in a science class that has been through the scientific method, though?
Science, well, we can observe, study, test, and demonstrate. We can observe gravity doing things. We can observe the velocity. Gravity pulls things down. 32 feet per second or 9.8 meters per second. We can observe that. We can test it. We can do it over and over again. And it works. We can observe all that's why it becomes a law. There are laws of thermodynamics that we observe. We don't observe evolution.
How do we explain away then the novel testable predictions that evolution has made and confirmed thousands of times?
Oh, like what? What prediction have they made that's been confirmed?
I mean, famously, the first one was Darwin talking about a bird with fused fingers, and then they find the Archaeopteryx a few years later, and it has exactly the mutations that they expected.
Okay, if you find a bird that has claws on its wings, like Archaeopteryx, that does not prove it's intermediate. You found bones in the dirt. You might have found a species that always existed exactly like that and went extinct. You don't know it's intermediate. It happens to fit their religion of something changing and growing fingers. But see, you don't know that it's not an example of an extinction. That's why it would not be science. Make it happen again.
So do you think that God is just deceiving us then?
No, God's very clear. He's made it clear. All cows produce cows. And he said 20 times in the first 7 chapters in the Bible, they will always bring forth after their kind. Now, if you've chosen to deceive yourself, that's your problem. But God said that bring forth after their kind. That's all anybody sees.
But if we're looking at this from a scientific view, we're not going to invoke God, right? Because yeah. So within science, we look at evolution, and they make lots of these predictions. We'll find these fossils, and then they find them after the fact, and it's happened many times. Within genetics, we see the same thing. We predict that we'll find certain genes in animals that are related in certain ways, and we do. The hereditary is explained through genetics. So, I mean, how do we? If we take evolution out of that, which is the basis for so many other branches of science, how do we then account for wiping out whole branches of science?
Oh, I love science. I'm very familiar with most of the branches of science. I'm not super good at chemistry. I got a lousy chemistry teacher in high school. I always stared at the back wall while he talked over everybody's head. But you're saying they find fossils, and this answers a prediction. You're assuming then that the layers of the earth are different ages, the geologic column. I pointed out for years there is no such thing as a geologic column. The layers are not different ages. All over the world, petrified trees are found standing up, running through these layers. All the layers formed in 1 year, Noah's flood. Polystrata fossils, they're common. There are thousands of them. Yeah. So your whole geologic column, I know that's your Bible, and you believe in it, but it's not. To say we found a fossil in this layer, and therefore it is a certain age, is ludicrous.
Are you aware of that? Oh, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, Kent.
Yeah. All the fossils may be sorted based upon their body density. You might find reptiles in the same layer. If you had a worldwide flood and the dead animals are floating around, they would tend to settle out according to body density. Sure, they might. Probably all the birds are in the same layer because birds have hollow feathers, hollow bones, they float. It has nothing to do with evolution. There's a much better explanation, simple hydrologic sorting.
But when we look at those layers, we don't see hydrologic sorting. We see them arranged by complexity, about simpler forms to more complex forms.
Well, there's no such thing as there's no such thing as a simple life form. Okay, no such thing. A bacteria is not simple.
Body plans are the things that I'm pointing at mostly here. But we see complexity over time as we go forward. And as sorry.
Go ahead.
As for polystrate fossils, are you aware of the explanation for polystrate fossils?
I've heard some really weak attempts to explain it. I think it's much better to say the layers formed within a few hours of each other. Every tide going up and down is sucking water in and out, making layers. To have a tree stand there over millions of years is ludicrous.
How does that layer? Well, okay, so that's not. I'll wait till we get into the rest of it before we go there. But
I'll answer your question. I believe that any sorting that there is of the fossils, and it's not real good sorting, is best explained by habitat. Clams are found at the bottom because they already live at the bottom. Okay, or best explained by mobility. Clams can't run very fast. Of course, they got trapped first in the flood. Maybe by intelligence. Clams aren't too smart, as far as anybody can tell. Maybe by body density. Clam feathers are heavier, or clam shells are heavier than bird feathers. So if there's any sorting, and there is not a real good, clear sorting to the fossils, but if there is, it doesn't prove anything other than a worldwide flood.
Why do we not?
I'm not asking that to be taught in schools. I'm asking you to stop teaching that these layers are different ages, and you can prove that by the fossils. You can't prove any such thing.
Be taught as well.
I love geology. Geology is the study of the earth. Ask me questions about the earth. I can tell you a lot about it. Okay, but it's evolution has nothing to do with it. The layers. I flipped this over this morning or yesterday. It made probably 20 layers in a matter of a few minutes. Yeah. Are the layers different ages? No, they're all in here at the same time.
Do they harden into rock overnight?
Sure. I could take the water out, let it dry out, and they would. Now it doesn't need to be overnight, but layers form rapidly. Well, layers can form rapidly. If I shuffle a deck of cards, is the top card younger? No, they're all the same age.
I don't agree how hydrologic sorting works. I mean, I just don't think that explains why we don't see things like sauropods with humans, like why we don't see any later mammals in the Cambrian layers. Like,
gentlemen, that's 10 minutes. We're going to go.
Well, let me answer that one, Stephen.
Okay.
First of all, you're claiming we don't see those. I don't think you could prove that. Okay. But if indeed fossils are sorted, again, there's a much better explanation: hydrologic sorting. Layers form horizontally, not vertically. Watch the movie Experiments in Stratification. The layers, as the water's moving a certain direction, multiple layers form. The layers are not different ages. They're forming horizontally, not vertically. But this whole geologic column is dumb. It doesn't.
Well, I think that I agree that you can form layers that way with different materials. They'll sort hydrologically when left suspended in water. But the layers we see are well-defined layers. And again, we've never found animals where they're not supposed to be.
I disagree. I think I can show you thousands of examples where they have. I've been to Glen Rose, Texas, where they find dinosaur and human footprints together. I've interviewed people who've seen dinosaurs still alive, like Loch Ness Monster and Lake Champlain Monster and Mokele-Mbembe in the Congo swamp. So I think your whole religion of evolution teaches something that's just simply not supportable by the evidence. And I've asked this question. I've never gotten an answer. The evolutionists teach and want us to teach and believe that the layers are different ages. You've already said that. Here's your geologic column. Okay. If this layer is 2.5 billion years old down here, Cambrian, and the Holocene's only 10,000 years old, where was all this dirt sitting for 2.4999 billion years waiting to land? This dirt is the same age as this dirt. Every speck of dirt in the universe is the same age, whether 6,000 or 6 trillion. If it came from a big bang, every speck of dirt in the universe is the same age.
Right.
Isn't it?
So that's not necessarily wrong, but I think geomorphology is the thing you're looking for. Because of land masses moving and changing and erosion and wind blowing it around over time, but tectonic movements and all that, we recycle.
Very familiar with all that.
We recycle the rock down into the mantle, which then is melted, and that's kind of what we call new rock. Like volcanic rock, we consider to be new rock, even though it's made out of materials that were already part of the earth.
Well, that was my argument. If you're moving it around, even changing it, metamorphic or igneous rock coming out of a volcano, it's still the same dirt. It's still the same molecules.
Well, we don't age.
Moving it from here to here. That's why if I shuffle a deck of cards, is the top card younger? That's what you guys are claiming. Because we moved it over here, we sank it down into the earth and melted it, and it came back up. Therefore, it's now a different age. No. It's still the same dirt. It's not a different age.
The mechanisms that laid down that layer are the different age. We don't, whenever we look at those things and we try to get an age of them, we don't look at just the age of the dirt. Like, for example, with carbon dating, we're measuring the amount of carbon and putting it in a ratio of what it, and we understand how much there should be because of solar rays and all that stuff. And the soil holds a certain amount of that. So whenever we look at that layer and we see that certain amount, we can say, oh, well, this is this age. But usually the layers, the way that we age them are, and I know you love this, but we use index fossils. So we know the age of a particular animal, and we can compare it to things such as things that grow in the ocean, different reefs and stuff that we know grow on a certain time scale. We can confirm that age, and then we know that things in that layer are that age. So then they say, yes, that layer's that age. And I know you think that's circular reasoning. Oh, there it is.
Even the evolutionists think it's circular reasoning. American Journal of Science. Intelligent layman has long suspected circular reasoning in the use of rocks to date fossils and fossils to date rocks. The geologist has never bothered to think of a good reply. It cannot be denied. Let's see. They're arguing in a circle. The age of rocks by the age of the fossils, and the fossils by the age of the rocks. So, New Scientist magazine. They admit it. Here's an American Journal of Science. Yes, it's circular reasoning.
Can I pose it in the form of a question? So
sure.
If we were to find, say, a dinosaur, well, say a person in a layer, and we know that person was 10,000 years old, would it then be fair to say that the things that we find in that layer are around that same time period?
Not necessarily. If the layers are forming horizontally, you could get a fossil deposited here, and then downstream 6 months later, get another fossil deposited in the same layer, but because they're forming horizontally, not vertically. So no, it is not correct to say if they're in the same layer, they're the same age. Watch the video, Experiments in Stratification. They show clearly at the Colorado Test Laboratory, where they do experiments in sedimentation, so submarines know where to hide if the valley's filling in. The layers do not form vertically, they form horizontally. So it is not correct to say because they're in the same layer, therefore the same age. Not correct.
Well, I mean,
and I point out, if you look, just take Grand Canyon as an example. They've got all these different time periods that they talk about, the Cenozoic, Mesozoic, Paleozoic, Archeozoic. Each one of them contains limestone. What's the difference between Cambrian limestone and Jurassic limestone? They're still limestone.
actually, it is a bit different. But that's neither here nor there. It doesn't matter to
Well,
me.
my point. But you guys, your whole, that's why I say evolution's a religion. You believe the layers are different ages. You believe they're deposited this way and don't admit they're deposited this way. If there's any sorting to the end, maybe they're sorted based upon which ones would die first in a flood. The ones that are already in the water. If there's hot water coming into the bottom of the ocean, the fountains of the deep breaking open, it's going to kill all the creatures within an effective radius, 10, 15 miles, like the diatomaceous earth quarry in Southern California. I think it's right on the San Andreas Fault. The hot water came out, killed all the diatoms by the gazillions, and they snowed to the bottom and made a 300-foot thick layer of diatoms, which we now dig up and use it, diatomaceous earth from Lompoc, California. So all that happened in a matter of moments from a temperature change. It's right on the San Andreas Fault.
Well,
Nothing to do with evolution.
I think that's a geologic process that is well understood. And we don't just because you can't apply it to every single situation doesn't mean it doesn't apply normally to the layers. That's like trying to point out the anomaly in this isn't the norm. It's the odd one out.
Well, I don't think there is a norm. I think you guys have pretended there's a norm, and you believe the layers are different ages, and you're welcome to believe that. But my point is, the evidence shows with polystrata fossils sticking up through all of them, they can't be millions of years different. The tree would have died or would have rotted and fallen over.
So polystrate fossils.
Okay.
The explanation, as I understand it, for polystrate fossils, and again, I'm not an expert on anything. I'm some dude from Kentucky. I don't know much, but polystrate fossils seem to have formed as a fossil first, and in areas where the land was eroded back to expose that petrified tree, and then covered back up because of flooding and dry periods, which we have all over the world, monsoon seasons and such. So in the areas where these are found, they seem to suggest that there was a lot of flooding and wash off in that area so that it exposed that and recovered it. And so it sticks through multiple layers. And that's my understanding of it. I no promises.
Well, that's something you'd have to take by faith and believe. A friend of mine is one of the big wigs up at the coal mine in central Alabama. There's his name and phone number and email. It's Dr. Don McDonald, if you want to talk to him. Troy State University. They find petrified trees in their coal mine that run through two different layers of coal. They say coal formed in the Carboniferous period when thousands of trees got buried and squeezed and turned to coal. I agree. Pressing trees and vegetation turns it to coal. They can do it in 20 minutes in the laboratory. They can make coal. It's too expensive to make, you can still dig it out cheaper than you can make it that way. But you have petrified trees coming right through these seams of coal. He said, Brother Hovind, we find this stuff all the time. Here's sample trees that they found, A, B, C, D, E, up to H. Tree H goes through the Mary Lee Formation. Tree A goes through the Blue Creek Formation, two different seams of coal, but they also go through a central layer together, indicating they all had to form rapidly. 27 layers of Specimen Ridge in Wyoming go through many layers, and they don't have any roots. It's like the tree was yanked out by a flood, redeposited. There's a 30-foot petrified tree running through two seams of coal, the same tree. So if you wish to believe the tree petrified before and then stood there waiting for the layer to form around it, even the petrified tree standing up would begin to disintegrate and decay as just thermal expansion and temperature change would break it apart. We got all kinds of petrified wood in our museum. But see, the difference here is until we find the answer to this, I believe we should not be teaching that we know that the layers are different ages because there's clear evidence that they can't be. You might have come up with a theory of how they can't be. In Joggins, Nova Scotia, there are thousands of these petrified trees standing up, running through all the layers. Go to ianjuby.org. He goes there all the time. He documents everything. ianjuby.org. Go see him. Here's one. Joggins, Nova Scotia, petrified tree standing up, running through all the layers.
And what is a noticeable feature about the area you just mentioned? Where is that? What region?
Joggins, Nova Scotia, right
It's
there.
a coastal region.
Yeah, Joggins, Nova Scotia,
Yeah.
right on the, however you pronounce that Canadian or Indian name. But see, the fact that in France, there's a hillside where the petrified trees are upside down, running through all the layers. Let me get a picture of it here. There we go. The Saint Atine in vertical trees and the coal measures in sandstone, they have trees that are upside down running through the layers. I think a flood that made all the layers in 1 year is by far the best explanation. Now, if you want to make up a story about how, well, maybe they stood there for millions of years waiting for they stood upside down, waiting for new layers. I don't think that's logical, but you're welcome to believe that. That's my whole point. Evolution's a religion.
It's not that I want to believe anything, Ken. I think that we use mechanisms of natural things to explain the world around us. And sometimes those aren't complete and they're definitely not absolute. But like you said, well, these fossils are like this. Well, there's a natural explanation for it. You think that relies on faith, so you switch to a different faith-based explanation for it. And that's fine. I mean, it's your belief, whatever. But I don't think that, number one, your alternative answer holds any water whatsoever. And I think that
that wouldn't matter. Right.
It didn't happen. But we don't just look at things and say, well, must have been this. I mean, we have mechanisms that explain how these things form. Why those are discarded, I don't understand. But
well, would you agree this evolution theory that is taught now predominantly in schools, the surveys show about 22% of Americans believe in the evolution theory that there's no God and just we all got here by natural process, 22%. So you guys are certainly in the minority.
Sure.
40% believe God made the world in the last 6,000 years or 10,000 years, 40%. So we're the majority. The rest of them believe God did it, but he might have taken a long time to do it. So the Bible says at the end of time, the people who scoff at the Bible would be ignorant of the creation and the flood. I think the flood is the best explanation for all the layers that we find. Rapid deposition and rapid bending while they're all soft. These layers of rock that are bent, if you examine them, I've been there many times. I lived right there in California near them. You go look at the bent rock layers, get your students up there, get a magnifying glass, say, come here, kids, let's look at this. There are no internal fracture marks. If you took a stack of pancakes and bent them, then they wouldn't crack. If you wait till the pancakes get hard and then bend them, now they're going to crack. The layers do not have fracture marks. All the layers were soft and all bent at the same time. I think that's what the evidence shows. Now, if somebody wishes to teach, hey, these layers are different ages, sorry, if the bottom one's older, it would have dried out. And when you try to bend them all together, they're going to crack and get little fracture marks.
If this layer was actually in the ground at one point and uprising is the explanation for it, could heat also explain that bending? I mean, you could apply enough heat, you could get that bending, I think.
Well, if you're going to apply the heat, you have to get it back to melting temperature. I don't think that's it. Then it becomes igneous rock, and this is sedimentary rock. Igneous means it's been ignited or heated. That's all. Rock that's been heated, melted. Igneous, like lava or basalt or something like that. So I think the evidence shows clearly all the layers formed while they're all soft, which indicates, I think, within a few weeks of each other, before they dried out. To me, it's a better explanation to say it's a flood, where all layers made in 1 year, all got bent during that flood while the crust of the earth is flexing up and down and sliding around. I agree with plate tectonics to a degree. I agree there's subduction. I agree there's volcanic activity. I've climbed volcanoes before. Like I said, taught earth science for years. I love the study. But evolution is not part of it. It's a religious belief. I believe the flood did this. But I would quickly admit, I take that on faith. I think that's what the evidence shows. The layers were all soft and all bent at the same time. Now, you guys wish to believe something different, but I don't think you can explain why there are no internal fracture marks. They had to be all soft at the same time. But you will go on. You're going to go right over it and go on believing evolution because that's what you've been taught. And you like the freedom it gives you from God's rules would be my guess.
No, actually, what I'll do is after we're done here, I'm going to go look up this thing about cracked rocks and see what the natural explanation is for it. Because I don't know and I'm interested.
Okay, very good.
That is our time. So if you each would like to go into your closing statements, Joe, we'll let you go first. You can give us your closing thoughts for 5 minutes, and then we'll hand it over to Dr. Hovind to give final thoughts for 5 minutes. And if you guys want to schedule another debate here in the near future or a discussion, we could definitely do that.
Okay. All right. So when it comes to the question of is evolution a religion, I still don't think that we've established that there is any God or supernatural being that evolution celebrates. Time is, nobody prays to time or worships time, and many Christians and Hindus and other people hold religious beliefs and still believe that evolution is true and accept the scientific findings there. The argument that evolution is not science, I'm not even real sure how to respond to that, honestly, but I think that we can go and look at the process that the claims of evolution were put through to determine whether it's an acceptable conclusion or not. I would, if we're going to call evolution and like Christianity are both religions, then I suggest that we put Christianity through that same process and try to figure out some truths about it and see where we get, because I don't think that making an argument for Christian doctrine in any way negates the natural explanations for evolution. And with that, I truly appreciate you guys having me, and thanks for the talk, Kent, and I'll concede the rest of my time.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that, Joe, and appreciate you coming on. I look forward to seeing you in Kentucky if we get up there. Yeah. Trying to raise the money for the trip. We work on the edge of zero here all the time. We spend it just as fast as we get it. Anyway, so I know you don't worship time, but I did a whole video number 1 of my series, Creation Seminar series, called The Age of the Earth. Different scientific ways to prove this Earth cannot be billions of years old. When you take away, would you agree, if we took away billions of years, if we could demonstrate the Earth is less than 10,000 years old, would that destroy completely the evolution theory?
Yes. Yeah. It would falsify.
No question.
Yes.
Completely falsify it.
Yes.
So just one proof of a young Earth, like if there's 10 bits of evidence that says George is guilty of the crime, but George has proof he was in a different country when it happened. That one bit of evidence that I wasn't there, even though they maybe find his blood there, his fingerprints there, maybe somebody planted all that. There's lots of ways to get somebody guilty of a crime when they didn't do it. So all it has, one bit of evidence that proves he wasn't even there, is all he needs. One proof of a young Earth is all we need to destroy evolution. For instance, the Earth is spinning, but it slows down 1,000th of a second every day. Google leap second. Well, that indicates that it can't be billions of years old. The moon is getting further from the Earth. Okay, well, that means it used to be closer. That limits it down to 1 billion years for the Earth-Moon system. And I go through that in video number 1. So you may not worship time, but you have to have billions of years to make your theory even begin to look reasonable. And then I would point out, Your Honor, that relying on something happening over billions of years is a clear evidence that it's not science. We can't observe it. We don't see it. Nothing wrong with religion. We know what is a religion? I'm not ashamed of my religion. I believe by faith that God made the world and he wrote a book and told us who he is and what he wants. I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ. I believe. Faith, the just shall live by faith. The problem is you evolutionists will not admit that you have a religion. Hot soup is the origin of life. Yeah, primordial soup where life began, as many scientists believe. You should be proud of your religion. Go ahead, bow down and worship it. There he is right there. Darwin, primordial soup. If you believe humans are related to frogs, that's fine. I don't care if somebody believes that. Be proud of it. Be like the Egyptians and make yourself a frog goddess. They do. This is their god. And they made statues of them. This guy, Carl Sagan said, science is self-correcting. To be accepted, new ideas must survive the most rigorous standards of evidence and scrutiny. I agree, Carl. Nobody's ever seen a cow produce a non-cow. Never. It only takes place in the imagination millions of years ago. Because you believe the cow came from an amoeba. Here's the cows up here. Here's the amoebas. They believe they came from an amoeba. Great. Believe it. but don't call it science and don't make everybody pay to have that stupid chart taught in our public school system. That's my only complaint. But if you believe in evolution, great. This is America, the land of the free and the home of the slave. You go start your own school and teach evolution. Anybody wants to pay and come learn it. But I don't want to pay for your religion to be taught in our schools. Okay? Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen, both of you. You conducted yourselves like gentlemen, and it was a very good debate to host. I had to do very little, so thank you for allowing me to sit back and be lazy. And hopefully we see you guys on screen together again soon, possibly in Kentucky.
Sounds great. Stephen, or see, Joe, do you want to tell people how to get a hold of your channel or what to Kentucky Atheist? Or
Yeah, sure. Anybody that's looking for my channel, you can find me at the Kentucky Atheist on YouTube and all my other social media stuff. We are planning the ARC protest in July. That's the ARC encounter thing we're talking about, July 6th. And everybody's welcome to come.
Joe, I'm curious. Why would you be protesting the ARC? He's not demanding that be taught in schools.
Okay,
why do you do this?
First of all, he kind of is, because he's gotten into homeschooling, which is a parent's choice to choose, but the standards of what you're teaching kids and calling it education are pretty loose when it comes to homeschooling. But my main issue with the ARC encounter is number one, I think it violates separation of church and state. Kentucky taxpayers are very much paying for the ARC encounter being there. The state gave huge rebates to Ken Ham in many different forms, and 85% of his taxes that he pays goes right back to him. The city of Williamstown has suffered immensely because of the promises the ARC encounter made and didn't fulfill, and there's many videos of Ken Ham putting children in an auditorium and having them repeat after him that the earth is 6,000 years old, which is just wrong. And again, we disagree on that point, but that's my main points, is the indoctrination of children and separation of church and state are the two main issues that I have.
Would it be okay for a public school teacher to put kids in an auditorium and have them repeat dinosaurs lived millions of years ago? Is that okay to have them repeat that?
I don't think that's the correct way to teach anything. I would have a problem with that as well.
Okay, would you agree that all the universities that I'm aware of are tax exempt and therefore they are a drain on society if it's a financial complaint? The universities that teach evolution are tax exempt. So are they cheating the taxpayers by teaching the evolution religion at taxpayer expense?
While I think there is a lot of great information you can gain from going to college, I learned tons of stuff in college, but I still also would hold to that American universities are one of the biggest grifts we've ever seen.
We agree on that. Yep.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, would you be open for answering a few questions that we've had come in throughout the debate?
Absolutely.
I am. Please do.
All right. Let's get them up there, Joseph. All right. How does Ken explain unbroken history before and after the time of the flood myth, China, Egypt, and the Indus Valley?
Well, first place, I don't think it's unbroken history. I think there is a lot of history. We don't have any historical documents or records that are provable back beyond 8,000 or 10,000 years. So we're talking a minor difference compared to billions of years. And I think that there's plenty of evidence that the Chinese and some of these legends are greatly exaggerated. So the time would be greatly exaggerated. I think that we may have civilizations continuing a history. There was 1,500 years, 1,600 years before the flood came. People might have built cities and they got drowned, covered in the flood. There are lots of underwater cities right now. They're finding more all the time. What happened? Okay, so I don't think that's a major problem for what's unbroken history. That's covering up here. Before and after the time of the flood myth. I like the way you phrased the question. It shows your little prejudice there. Okay, China, Egypt, the Egyptians exaggerated all kinds of things. Okay, I don't think too many people trust the Egyptian history to be dogmatic. They're just, I mean, they built great exaggerations. I would steer you to somebody more of a historian who would say, well, even then, it's only a few thousand years. It's not millions or billions of years. So that's about all I can handle on that one right now, or I'll give you on that one. Okay.
All right. Thank you for that.
Do you want me to respond?
Joe, yeah, you can respond to all of these as well. Your explanation for the unbroken history.
So I think that's an excellent question, and one of the things that is commonly brought up is calendars from the Middle East and from China and from Egypt that all show that they carried right on through the time that there was supposed to be a flood without even noticing it.
There are 450 flood legends that have been found around the world where they did talk about a flood.
Sure.
Why would so many countries, non-Christians, why would they talk about a global flood?
Well, we do understand some of those older ones, how they were just stories. We understand that they weren't meant to always be literal. Some of them are literal in the beliefs of many religions. Other religions have flood myths as well, but those all sprout from stories that were meant to be legend in the first place.
Okay, now keep in mind, we are not asking for our flood story or our creation story to be taught at taxpayer expense. The burden of proof is not on us, not on us. You guys are demanding that we all pay for your creation myth by a Big Bang to be taught at public schools as if it's part of science. And it's not. It's just a religion.
What should we say to kids when they ask, how do we explain the diversity of life on Earth?
Well, you could say, you don't need to explain that at all. If like in a biology class, you can teach the kids the muscles and the bones. This is the deltoid, the biceps, triceps, flexors, extenders, and carpals, metacarpals, phalanges. You can teach all of anatomy without ever mentioning how it got here. It's not. No doctor on the planet worries about evolution when he's doing surgery. He needs to know his anatomy.
Gentlemen,
so if a kid says, how did we get here? The teacher can say, we're not allowed to discuss that. Right now, they're only allowed to discuss one religion. Well, we got here by evolution. They're not allowed to even say, well, maybe God created it. You guys have a monopoly on this.
I was going to say, I'd be happy to host you guys for another hour if you want to keep the back and forth, but we do have more questions.
Let's ask the questions.
All right, this is a question for Kentucky Atheist. You can go first. Do you believe the universe is eternal because the Big Bang hypothesis has too many flaws? Everything came from nothing.
Well, that's that's an extremely loaded question, I feel like, but I'll do my best with it. I don't believe that the universe came from nothing. I don't believe that it's possible for nothing to exist. Whenever we look at the theory of the Big Bang, again, it's the explanation of the expansion of space and time. And just because any flaw or position has a theory doesn't mean that you dismiss all of it at once. You don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak.
Okay. Well, thank you. Good question. I believe the evolutionists have to believe something was eternal, either matter, time, space, or in Big Bang. It says nothing exploded or rapidly expanded, which is ludicrous. Time, space, matter expanded. So the matter didn't actually move. The space was expanding. Try that when you get stopped for a speeding ticket. Officer, I wasn't speeding. The distance between me and my house was expanding rapidly.
Try and catch me a DUI, huh?
Yeah.
Well,
it's not science. That's all. It's not science.
Can I redirect this a little bit?
Sure, yeah. It's all yours.
Because I don't think that the Big Bang Theory is an explanation for the origin of matter, space, or time, and it doesn't attempt to answer those questions. And that whenever you try to then refer to it by not answering those questions, you're misrepresenting what it actually is. It's just the expansion of space and time. That's the Big Bang.
All right, we'll pull up the next question. Can Kent name a single scientific discovery in biology, genetics, or medicine that was made because of creationism and not evolution?
Oh, there are whole books written on that topic. Just one classic one is the Bible says very clearly, the life of the flesh is in the blood. But back in the 1700s, they thought if you're sick, you should take out your blood, you'll get better. It's called the doctrine of humors. And some people who believed the Bible said, wait a minute, George Washington was bled 3 times, I believe, trying to get him over the flu or whatever he had, and they killed him. He took his blood out. The theory was stupid. The doctrine of humors is stupid. And the Bible says the life of the flesh is in the blood. So they said, man, let's find a different way to cure diseases than taking out the blood. That's one. But many books have been written on that. ICR.org, Institute for Creation Research, has a lot of articles on that on their website about discoveries made because people believe the Bible. People who believe the earth is round because of the Bible. Discoveries of other Yeah, I steer you to ICR.org. They've got that's not something I cover regularly on my presentation, but yeah, but see, it wouldn't matter. We don't have to have say creation answers all the questions because evolution is a religion. I admit, I believe by faith, creation, God created it. It's a religion. I admit. He will not admit he has a religion because he knows he'll lose tax funding. Right now, we're all paying for his religion to be taught. That's wrong.
Okay, so a couple things. What will you read the question again so I can make sure there's part of it.
Is it on your screen? It should be on your screen right there.
Sorry, I've got a chat box in front of it. My bad. The single scientific discovery was made because of creation and not evolution. Don't a lot of scholars and stuff hold that the Bible tries to explain that things live because of the breath of life and that you got sick because of bad air and that there were demons in that air causing it? I mean, if we're talking about absurd claims made, by people about things in the past, I think the Bible scores top place in that.
I think we would all agree that the air, we have to breathe air to live, and I think that because of that mentions in the Bible about air not breathing, God gave laws about sanitary laws, not touching a person that's just died or something like that. If you touch one, you can't touch anybody else for till nighttime after you wash your hands. That led to the whole field of modern health because of the Bible saying all the God's sanitary rules. They didn't understand about microbes back. They didn't have a microscope. God just said, if you do this, then don't touch somebody. They don't need to know why, just obey God's laws. Now we know why. And we find out, wow, that was a good law. I think, again, I'd go to ICR.org or AnswersInGenesis.org has a lot of stuff on those topics. They've got some biologists, that's what they specialize in.
Okay. All right, next question. Don't know if this has been or will be discussed, but what level of evidence would there need to be for the TKA to remove the A in his name? He seems respectful and open to discussion, and wonder what the level of evidence would be.
What evidence would there need to be to remove the A from my name? I don't. I don't know.
I want you to quit being an atheist.
Oh, I see. What would convince me that a God exists? Well, I think that any experience that I could say where that God's been revealed to me in some way, that God seems to do that throughout the Bible. I don't know why us atheists get left out of that, but I used to believe and I don't. As I looked into it, I came to a different conclusion.
Well, I would say 2 Peter chapter 3 says the scoffers are willingly ignorant. They don't want to believe. It wouldn't matter what you showed them. And that's been my experience with 387 debates. So,
wow.
A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. Somebody said years ago. So
I mean, the 10 Commandments say thou shalt not kill, and 2 pages later, God tells him to kill everybody. So I don't necessarily hold the things that the Bible say in real high regard.
All right, next question. Question for Kentucky. What do you believe will happen to you and your loved ones after your life is over?
Well, I think that we don't know that, first of all, but it doesn't seem that anything would happen once the biological mechanisms that make you live stop working. Everything that is our personality is inside and a product of our brain, and it doesn't seem like there would be anything after you pass away that energy ceases to exist and joins the universe's heat.
all right, and if your brain is a product of evolution, random chemicals arranging themselves by chance, how can you trust your conclusions and your thoughts?
Well,
maybe you got some chemicals in there backwards.
I mean, there is a great exercise in solipsism there that is that we doesn't really have a good answer to. We kind of make some basic assumptions that this is the reality we live in, and that the world works the way it does. But so I don't have any way to tell you that whether I'm wrong. I don't know if I'm not crazy. All that stuff.
Right.
Yeah. So, I base the conclusions I make on what I see and what I can observe and reproduce.
Well, one question I've been wanting to get answered is, if everybody in the world believed like you, would the world be a better place? I think that's similar to communism or North Korea. Hey, there's no God, government becomes God. Whereas the founders of this country said, we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal. They're endowed by their creator with certain rights. Where is the right for freedom of speech if atheism is true? Where's the right to bear arms, protect yourself? I think that there's a vast difference in how this plays out in society, as well as individual personal lives. Great difference.
I think atheism only answers one question. I'm not convinced that a God exists. As for those other questions, there seems to be, in the world now anyway, that more secular societies have higher education rates and are happier overall. There's been several sociological studies done. Places that are more secular seem to be more flourish more. I guess is the word I would use.
All right. Well, gentlemen, that's all the questions we have for this evening, and we thank you both for participating.
All right. Well, we'll see you in Kentucky. See you in Kentucky. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.